Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session of Lessons from Latin America. Before getting started, we would like to remind you that for interpretation, please click on the global icon and select your preferred language. Hola a todos y bienvenidos a la segunda sesión de Lessons from Latin America. Antes de empezar, nos gustaría recordarles que para habilitar la traducción, pueden presionar el icono de idioma en la parte inferior de la pantalla Zoom para seleccionar el idioma preferido. So welcome everyone, my name is Rolando Girodengo. I'm a Master of Architecture and Urban Design candidate at the Harvard University Graduate School of Design. And on behalf of my fellow organizers and the larger community at Latin GSD, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us in our second session of Lessons from Latin America. We would also like to thank the Graduate School of Design and the David Rockefeller Center for Latin American Studies for their help organizing this event. Before getting started, we would like to say that the Harvard Graduate School of Design is located on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is now known as Boston and Cambridge. We pay respect to the people of the Massachusetts tribe, past and present, and honor the land itself, which remains sacred to the Massachusetts tribe people. The school also recognizes the work of the Harvard University Native American program in cultivating the relationships that led to the creation of this acknowledgement.
Hi everyone, my name is Yazmín Crespo Claudio, and I am a PhD candidate at Harvard University Graduate School of Design and Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. I'm also a lecturer in architecture at the Department of Architecture here at the GSC and the co-founder of the design collective Taller Creando Sin Encargos. Yesterday, the first lessons from the symposium addressed questions about architecture as a tool to convey Latin American cultural, social, and political identity. Today's panel, Radical Pedagogies, is situated at the intersection of architecture, education, and territory. Panelists will discuss counter-narratives of architectural pedagogy, making space for alternative forms of collective thinking and doing that transcend borders, territories, and landscapes. We are joined by Maria Beatriz Garcia and Luciano Landaeta from Venezuela, Rodrigo, Sheward, and Martín del Solar from Chile, and Jorge Gracia from Mexico. Each one will have 20 minutes to present. After the presentations, we will engage in conversation and open the floor to questions from the audience. So please feel free to share your thoughts and remarks on the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar throughout the session. Having said that, I would like to introduce our first panelists, Luciano Landaeta and Maria Beatriz Garcia from Venezuela. Luciano is an MS of Architecture and registered architect with 20 plus of professional practice and academic experience, with proven expertise in the development of large-scale architecture and strategic urban planning for more than a dozen projects in several latitudes around the globe and in several contexts and realms. Maria Beatriz Mabe is an urban climate change specialist at the World Bank and co-founder of a firm and an NGO called Urban Elements Foundation in Caracas in 2014, with 8 other Harvard graduates from the GSC. Mabe has a keen commitment to international human development goals. Throughout her career, she emphasizes addressing climate change, low carbon city development, and innovative financing in an effort to create social equilibrium. In addition, she is a social designer on the ground and a climate finance strategist at the World Bank focused on using environmental and climate green financing. She is currently the executive director of DISLOCAL lab. So DISLOCAL is a platform that brings together architects and urban disciplines in different latitudes, together with a network of global cooperation, oriented towards building beyond simulation, focused on the peripheral world. Operating as an experimental on-site university, they approach design education with an eye for net zero sustainable processes through architecture and policy, taking an experimental space on site, live with real-time problem-solving tools to generate innovative solutions in the context of challenging socioeconomic conditions across the globe. Thank you, Mabe and Luciano, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me just make sure here. Let me know if you guys can see this. Perfect. Play. Okay. So just to give you guys a little backdrop, DISLOCAL was created around 1.5 years ago with another set of 22 Venezuelan architects and a set of 5 international architects partners with DISLOCAL. DISLOCAL starts like this image shows in this very powerful image actually that was published yesterday. SOS, $15 per person for a pension. And DISLOCAL starts with this idea that architecture has to emerge from an analysis of the economic and political situation that every country goes through. And in Venezuela right now, there's a huge crisis that we all know is currently in development. And one of the issues is having disenfranchised professionals in the design and architecture, urban planning, and landscape architecture fields, as well as other fields, disenfranchised by the state itself. So just to give you guys a little bit of backdrop about Venezuela, here you see some of the buildings, and Venezuela is very famous for its modernist architecture, and it has a lot of assets available in terms of built environment. But what DISLOCAL tried to do was remove itself from simply looking at architecture in terms of aesthetics and form, but looking at architecture as a product or a byproduct of the decisions that state actors or non-state actors make together. Hence, this is why we brought in and recruited and developed a social design whereby we brought the capital, the biggest capital that we have are our professors and our students, as well as our very well constructed governance system that serves as modern day checks and balances to develop the type of capacity building that architects, designers, and urban planners will need in Latin America, especially in countries where the government is actually not helping in the process of offering the education that it used to offer back in other times. So what is DISLOCAL all about? It emerges from the need to empower its people, empower the discipline of architecture and its architects from inside the core of Caracas and other cities in Venezuela. And it does so by creating a technological platform that moves the needle in the direction of more innovative thinking. So when we looked at answering the question, is DISLOCAL enacting a radical pedagogy? We came up with a quick agenda, which is reviewing the conceptual background of radical pedagogy as it's spoken about today in 2022, pinpointing the current debate and sharing our vision, and in general, sharing the vision that we're going to have in the future. So what is radical? Radical in general emerges from a combination of different authors. One of the ones that just spoke this last month was Beatriz Colomina and Ilse Wolf from South Africa, discussing in a question in a Q&A what radical pedagogies means in a project that they're doing in Princeton University. And in response to that, I try to focus on what DISLOCAL is doing that is different from that understanding or from that conceptualization. And what we're doing different from this type of understanding is taking the idea of radical pedagogy, not only and understanding it as architects understand it, but understanding it as multiple disciplines understand it around the world. And one of the things that we want to focus on is in locating the disenfranchised people, which in Venezuela's case could be people that are disabled, women, children, but also community members and those in the profession that have been disenfranchised by the very government itself. And so what we're trying to do is pretty much take over or invert that capital, that human capital, bring it, recruit it into a platform, create that network, and take over the knowledge and give that knowledge back through a passport or educational passport that can be used in different territories. So here I wanted to give you guys an image of two professionals that used to work for the state and actually was relying on the state in their old age to make around $1,000, $2,000 equivalent, in this time and age, to be able to cover their costs. But because of what's happening, or what happened in the last 20 years, these retired professionals have ended up in the outskirts of the economy and also of the reality projected in the built environment. And so what we try to do is to do several things that are considered to be radical. We try to include the politicized aspects of educational institutions, the policies and practices, and we orient it towards radical social change. And for us, radical social change is not only what it seems radical in the modern day debates, but it's a little bit, it's taking sociology and urban anthropology and really directly observing social dynamics in order to understand who needs the change. And in this case, a lot of the people that need it are, it's even more radical than offering a voice to females and children and disabled. It's offering employment, it's offering capital back to these people through financing models that brings architecture as a point of departure, but offers the potential of net zero in the lifespan of people that are both in the outskirts of the city, but also in the outskirts of the economy, marginalized in both. So another thing that we do is that we look at cutting edge developments in technology. We bring them into the platform and we evolve with technology in order to also test theories that are radical in not only in the output, but also in the process. So just so you guys know, in the background, Marcos Coronel Bravo, co-founder of DISLOCAL, Ricardo Sanz and Rodrigo Marin, architects in Venezuela, created this amazing, very flexible and dynamic way of seeing a curriculum. And it's in this chart, it's very complex, but if you really read the chart with this legend, you will understand that it creates almost like a iPhone kind of mentality within the curriculum over 16 weeks that could be transferred all over the world, so that anyone who's in a state where they're like an Afghanistan female who doesn't have the state to back them up can be backed up through the system. So we invent or reinvent the wheel through these type of curriculum formation. And we think that radical, it brings together these strains of thoughts where community is engaged, but where also the margins of society are reinvented through new processes that are developed within the platform itself. We create we invite locals from Venezuela to integrate their ideas with locals that are now dislocated because the state has not allowed them, and there's the diaspora of Venezuelans have lost legitimacy in some cases through media and disadvantages that the media has portrayed Venezuelans across the world. And so we're trying to empower the Venezuelan professional to feel like they're connected to their homeland and connected to local resources, but in terms of capacity building. So as you can see, DISLOCAL is very dynamic and it brings different layers onto our platform. And at the end of the day, what we really want to do is to develop capacity collectively, but using our country as the forefront and the backdrop of what we do. Having professionals there that are giving that information to students across the world, and having those students across the world re-engage with Venezuela and outside of what the media is stating, and engage it through something like very positive, which is the built environment. And we do it understanding net zero development. So what do? Three things. We evolve through technical transformation. We create social justice as an output and a product. And we incorporate flexible finance models that can leapfrog against the issues that are related to authoritarian regimes across the world. This is our group. This is the Venezuelan group of people. The executive direction, Marcos Coronel, myself, and Christian Ceballos. Our advisory, Luciano being one of them here, Alfredo and Henry Redas Alfredo Brillenberg. And then our artistic committee, Marcelo, Sara, Kovalenko, Rodrigo Armas, and Rafael, always inventing to be radical also in the way that the aesthetic itself of our website and everything that we do, trying to take it to the next level. And we have an external set of viewers, which are two Dutch people that live in Costa Rica, AO01. Then we have two French ladies that are Constellation Studio in France. And we have a Mexican counterpart also. We have our advisory board that involves anthropologists, international development specialists, some Venezuelans that worked in both state and out of state, and other nationalities to make sure that our curriculum advances with the change of time. I'm gonna go ahead and offer now the mic to Luciano Landaeta, who's going to take over in the last few minutes. Thank you.
All right, Mabe, thank you. Thank you actually for sharing this. I'm just gonna get this comment minutes on a little bit behind of the scenes. I mean, Mabe has explained and shared with us what has been the structure, what has been the very aiming, probably the ethos, like in how it actually was triggered in the last year and a half. Quite impressive. But questioning this notion of radical, basically coming from the Latin, this radix coming from the roots, which is fundamental part of the origin, and it's coming outside of the norm. So pedagogically speaking, it's a process that has cognitive methodologies. So the core learning process as the first part of the mire becomes to be also the methodology that we're aiming for, right? So that's what she was shared a couple of seconds ago in terms of the structure, abilities. It has put together, you need to imagine that all of us that somehow were inside the country and outside of the country needed to integrate a platform that was bringing the best skills possible, trying not to repeat and trying to convey and complete the circle of expertise along basically the last 20 years that some of us we've traveled around the world practicing, or in parallel, some of us that were actually practicing within the conditions that we have in the country. So it's an amalgamate consistency. We basically send across the message that we're going to active as a platform, which is one of the milestones and the battles that we conquer. And the second, it's what does define the purpose of what we do. I mean, first, is this the process? Is this the final product? Or how do we engage with the community? Or how do we work in parallel? So I think there were three aimings in that sense. It's not object-driven only. We're not going to deliver objects that probably could be abandoned in the time. We learn for the last 30 or 40 years that infrastructure doesn't make necessarily the final solution among most of the cases. So housing as a government policy probably has failed substantially and has for all kind of, let's say, size that you might actually measure a cost investment and et cetera, but also the constitution of the social fabric that we have at the moment. What's a Gini? I mean, we have an incredible difference between the lower income and the new stratus has been created in the last 15 years of the crisis that we have, and how these people might actually participate in their own destiny if it's possible. So it's basically about a bank skills that we don't feel the savers. We are participants. We're contributing in the country, and vice versa. So these two arrows are bringing for the notion of radical, but radical means on outside of the norm. What is outside of the government, and probably we can somehow create a parallel system that boosts people's life for the better. So peripheral doesn't mean necessarily being a rebel without a cost, but we've been shifting, moving, polycenter displays the boundaries, but I want to get this one. But the notion of having a dislocal, having displays, it has this double direction coming from us and decoding, understanding the social cultural current situation, but also inclusive spatial conditions, methodology, and actions. But more important, how this goes back integrated. It's not a line experience. It happens only once. We want to build up in let's say in the methodology, and has been the feedback. I think one of the real radical situations that we try to establish is the cyclical, scalar, and modular growth of that expertise. It gets transferred to others. So time is a new space in a sense, coming from different latitudes. What we currently get somehow hosted and bringing back to the decoding elements of our context. I mean, this is one of the first experience that we have. I'm sharing with you a little bit of how do we introduce the first exercise we have modules that have people that are not coming from the country, as exotic as people from India, even the Emirates and Saudi and some other countries in Africa. So the immersion, not from the political standpoint, but the immersion of the context is quite fundamental. How do we create the bedrock of knowledge and get it transferred through the platforms that we have? So we have the Universidad de Morón serving as a digital tool, and we try to establish other agreements in how we're going to grow and map circumstances, phenomena, directions, and etc. And integrate it not from the physicalities, but mostly for the phenomena that we can separate in different layers and etc. So this gets reflected in constant revision of this expertise, large scale infrastructure, constantly discussions of weekly reviews of where we stand in, participation with and feedback with students and participants in the community, and of course delivering the macro and the specifics were multi-purpose objects or multi-purpose solutions or systematic solutions overall. So trying to be synthetic in a way, but in a sense we basically are, once again, probably I repeat myself, we are ensembling a methodology that might grow. That's what becomes to be quite relevant and current at the same time. What makes a little more even radical is that it's what I said in the very beginning, might have probably a couple minutes to deliver the final message, is how do we put together practices that were only focused on the master planning, for example, or private sector or administrative city planning view. So those might come out of the silos that we probably were in the last 15, 20 years of practice and put it together for the one objective. This is what was sent across by Mabe, which is bi-directional growth in the context that we have, cultural, social, and specifically academical, if we want to call it that way, right? So pedagogical in that sense, not necessarily have to be where we're coming from. We're going to build tools that people are going to question what we do, and the infrastructure probably later in the future will be somehow articulated in the long run. So it's architecture and urban planning and community working together for the long term. Right?
Yes, and to add on to that, piggyback right. One issue is that we developed a partnership model that's extremely important, because with that partnership model, we'll be able to create like a educational passport whereby people who do not have access to their state, like Afghanis right now, people in Ukraine, unfortunately, others in Somalia, Lebanon. I mean, there's a crisis of citizens out in the world that don't have the backing of a state. And when you don't have the backing of the state, what happens to your studies if you're a profession? So one of the things we wanted to do is empower the professional who does not have that backing and offer them credits in an analysis of which partnerships can we have with which institutions, and who can give what type of accreditation credits, so that these can be transferred across the globe, even if you're sitting, and we do it at low cost. The most important thing is that people that don't have access to an education, like females right now in Afghanistan, will be able to study from their home if they want to. They could do hybrid if they can have the opportunity to leave because they migrated somewhere else. But the point is that we're thinking about those people that are the new kind of disenfranchised humans of the globe. And we try to do this through the Venezuelan empowerment of the professional in the Venezuelan kind of landscape that now has become a landscape that is everywhere around the world, sprinkled across the globe. And we want to take that on as we build capacity and give back through this iterative process in this platform that's meant for the most disenfranchised. That's a global issue now. I think that's around our minute, but we wanted to say thank you so much for listening to our analysis of radical pedagogy as DISLOCAL understands it, and we hope that you join us in becoming a student, or if not, in promoting change and within our own platform, because we're open to all the type of iterative feedback that we can go forward with all of you. Thank you, Luciano.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mabe and Luciano, for sharing your work with us. At this point, we would like to remind everyone that, in the audience that the Q&A feature is enabled in the webinar, and that we'll be collecting questions from our panelists, to answer after the presentations. Now we would like to welcome Rodrigo Sheward and Martín del Solar, who are joining us today from Chile. Grupo TALCA, run by Martín del Solar and Rodrigo Sheward, is an architectural team that aims to think and make architecture in sectors of society where typically the architect does not reach. It was founded in 2003 while the partners were studying architecture in the University of TALCA. Grupo TALCA is characterized by working with local processes, that is, maximizing existing resources and traditions associated with the communities they serve. They focus on promoting projects on the outskirts of the city or in rural communities using local resources, integrating the community to manage and develop participatory designs. They have carried out various projects of social impact, tourism, urban intervention, private construction in Latin America and Chile, Ecuador, Bolivia, Venezuela, and Mexico. They have won several competitions such as the Young Architects Programs Constructo in 2014, an annual collaborative competition between the Museum of Modern Art and MoMA PS1, whose purpose is to encourage innovative design research and promote emerging talent. In 2015, they won an award for the International Committee of Architecture Critics for Young Architects. In 2016, Grupo TALCA was part of the official selection to participate in the Architectural Biennale in Venice. Grupo TALCA constantly seeks to innovate and expand its fields of action. They are currently developing public proposals, private projects, and community development. Thank you, Martín and Rodrigo, for joining us today.
Gracias, Rolando. Gracias, Latin GSD, por la invitación. Voy a compartir pantalla. Bueno, nosotros les vamos a contar dos historias. Y partimos con esta imagen, que es, nos gusta siempre partir y terminar con esta imagen, y lo van a entender por qué, porque finalmente acá es donde nosotros creemos que la arquitectura debería, y la pedagogía, volver al centro de la persona, ¿ya? Y como Latinoamérica, tener algo que decir al mundo desde acá. Entonces les vamos a contar dos historias. Una historia de un pescador que habita en el Océano Pacífico, en Chile, y una historia de un pueblo leñador que habita la cordillera de los Andes, ¿ya? Entonces, con estas dos historias queremos empezar a dar vuelta a la idea, esta idea de un tipo de persona que habita Latinoamérica, que habita el territorio y que de alguna manera ha sido poco escuchada. O ya hace 15 o 20 años podría ser que comienza algún movimiento desde la arquitectura a mirar a este tipo de personas. Entonces, esto ocurre en la primera historia del pescador, que habita ahí en un pequeño pueblo, 200 kilómetros al sur, 250 kilómetros al sur de Santiago, de la capital en Chile, en el Océano Pacífico. Y esta historia ocurre cuando estábamos estudiando arquitectura en la Escuela de TALCA, ¿ya? Nos piden ir a buscar el habitar mínimo. Nosotros no entendíamos que era mucho eso, qué es el habitar mínimo, y entendíamos que de alguna manera podía estar cierto tipo de habitar alejado del centro. Entonces, o nos íbamos a la cordillera de los Andes, hacia los bordes de Chile. Chile es un país muy delgado, pero nos vamos a la cordillera o nos vamos al mar, porque en el centro está todo el equipamiento en el Valle Central, con las ciudades, carreteras y principalmente ese equipamiento. Tomamos la decisión de irnos al mar. Ahí está un pequeño pueblito que se llama Cuchi, que todo este es un territorio de dunas, de arena, y veíamos en una fotografía que había un pequeño camino que llegaba a un pequeño caserío. Eran 5 casas que estaban detrás de un bosque y estaban muy cerca del mar. Así que dijimos, bueno, alguien debe vivir ahí y vamos a ver cómo desarrollan su hábitat en ese lugar. Esa era una foto que el año 2001 no trabajábamos con Google Maps o Google Earth como ahora se hace, sino que estas las veíamos en fotos satelitales de la Fuerza Aérea. Y veíamos esta conformación de árboles y un pequeño camino. Dijimos, bueno, alguien tiene que vivir ahí. Vamos a ver qué pasa. Y llegábamos a este lugar, ¿no es cierto? Ahí estaba el conjunto de árboles, rodeado por pajonales, y cuando llegamos vimos esto, que dijimos, bueno, esto es importante y nos llama mucho la atención en relación a que cuando conversábamos con este pescador, él ni siquiera miraba lo que hacía, nos miraba la cara, conversaba y movía sus manos, ¿cierto? Y reparaba una cuerda con nudos y amarras. Y eso nos llamó mucho la atención. Dijimos, bueno, estuvimos conversando un tiempo con él y nos invita a pasar a su casa. Y ahí empezamos a ver que él resolvía todos sus problemas constructivos a partir del nudo y la amarra, de las cuerdas. Toda la inteligencia y sabiduría que tenía la tenía en la mano, y eso era transmitido a una manera de construir su hábitat. Pequeñas conformaciones de redes, ¿no es cierto? Ahí podemos ver cómo aprieta juncos donde corre el agua, donde abajo tiene que proteger algo, y lo va amarrando siempre con nudos y amarras. El clavo no era una solución en un ambiente salino y donde no lo podía comprar. Entonces siempre estaba relacionado a lo disponible, a trabajar con lo que hay. Ese es el pescador, y su vida se la pasó haciendo nudos, ¿ya? Y eso nos llamó mucho la atención. Y además tenía algo que era increíble, que fue cuando entendimos que estábamos en presencia de sabiduría pura, que era cuando él decía que cuando quería ampliar su casa, teníamos que ir al mar, a recoger lo que el mar le devolvía después de un temporal. Entonces, en Chile, lo que pasa es que la tormenta viene, choca con la cordillera de los Andes, viene la crecida de los ríos, el río arrastra materiales, ¿no es cierto?, constructivos y un montón de cosas en el ancho de Chile, los deja en el mar, y la corriente de Humboldt y el viento predominante suroeste los devuelve al lugar donde él habita. Entonces, cuando viene una tormenta, 7 días después, él sabe que va al mar y puede ampliar su vivienda, ¿cierto? Y eso dijimos, bueno, acá estamos en presencia de un sabio es algo increíble, y dijimos, bueno, pensábamos que esto lo teníamos que contar. Estábamos estudiando y mientras estudiábamos hacíamos foco siempre en este tipo de personas, hasta que nos encontramos ya titulados en un pequeño pueblo a las orillas de un volcán, el volcán Villarrica, con una comunidad de leñadores, ahora ya no en el mar. Ya habíamos tenido esa experiencia de habernos encontrado con un tipo de persona sabia que entendía sincrónicamente cómo habitaba la tierra y cómo desde lo disponible podía resolver problemas. Y luego, 6 años después, nos encontramos en un lugar que se llama Pino Huacho, en las faldas de un volcán. Todas estas líneas son las líneas de lava de las erupciones antiguas del volcán, y el pueblo se pone a un costado. Y el problema de este pueblo era que Pedro y la señora Marta, que era esta comunidad de leñadores, los padres, habían visto a sus hijos partir a la ciudad. Ese es lo que pasa en el campo, ¿cierto? En el campo los hijos, las generaciones jóvenes se van a la ciudad a prepararse, pero normalmente no vuelven. Y lo que había pasado también era que los bosques ya habían sido devastados por antiguas empresas, y solamente estos colonos que llegaron trabajaban de la leña muerta, ¿cierto? Y estaban volviendo a reforestar este lugar, pero los hijos no querían volver al campo. Entonces, ¿qué quedaba para estos padres que habían visto a sus hijos partir? Quedaba irse a la ciudad porque querían estar y que la familia no se descomponga. Entonces, ahí había una oportunidad de entender, ¿no es cierto?, cuál era la problemática acá. O se abandonaba este lugar y los padres y todo un pueblo se iba a vivir en la periferia urbana, ¿no es cierto?, y exigía a la ciudad una cantidad de viviendas y todo lo que eso significa, o podíamos hacer y desarrollar una idea para que los hijos vuelvan al campo, pero ya no a ser leñadores, ni carpinteros, porque ya eso ellos no querían, es un trabajo muy duro. Entonces, esta era una oportunidad de que ellos, como nacieron en este lugar, tenían esta imagen todos los días frente a ellos. Y nosotros que veníamos a este lugar, veíamos esto y decíamos, esto es una oportunidad gigante. Acá podríamos desarrollar la visión de los hijos en este territorio. Entonces, ahí está Pedro, ¿cierto?, el leñador, frente al volcán en su lugar. Luego de muchas conversaciones pudimos convencerlos de que podíamos pensar qué podían hacer los hijos en este lugar. Los hijos habían ido a estudiar turismo a la ciudad y querían trabajar al otro lado del volcán, en un lugar que estaba saturado por el turismo, que el turismo, entre paréntesis, puede ser incluso muy peligroso para los lugares, pero acá con los años se ha resguardado la escala de este turismo. No es el turismo que exige 500 o 1000 personas diarias en un lugar, sino que la familia empezó a entender de que eran 30 personas al día, y eso es lo que ellos reciben. Entonces, el problema es que este lugar no aparecía en el mapa, ¿cierto? No existía en el mundo, no existía ni siquiera no se conocían los lugares cercanos, así que había que construir una postal, ¿ya? Para que alguien viniera y pudieran vivir de esto. Así que comenzamos a hacer un catastro de madera que había quedado botada hace 50 años, de árboles muertos, y teníamos casi 3000 pulgadas madereras sin matar ningún árbol. Los árboles en este lugar se conservan, y con eso podíamos hacer algo. O hacíamos 4 pequeñas cabañas o refugios para arrendarlo, pero no lográbamos construir una postal, o con esa madera construíamos una postal, y los hijos y padres volvían a vivir juntos y a conservar este territorio. Comenzamos con eso, trabajamos con maquetas, entendiendo 3 dimensiones. Bueno, una dimensión que era la que nos enseñó el pescador, trabajar con lo que hay disponible, que era la madera, pero también había la sabiduría de un leñador, un carpintero y un mueblista. 3 hermanos que sabían 3 dimensiones del trabajo de la madera. El leñador, el trabajo con las grandes magnitudes en el bosque, el carpintero podía dimensionar estas piezas y disponerlas una al lado de la otra, y el mueblista, con un detalle constructivo, unir estas piezas sin clavos, porque son piezas, como las ven ahí, de grandes dimensiones. Bueno, finalmente se logra hacer la postal, esto empieza a dar la vuelta al mundo, con este diseño se empieza a hacer conocido el lugar, y comienzan a llegar los turistas, y seguíamos pensando qué hacíamos con lo que hay disponible. Esta es la postal en invierno, ¿cierto? Y los hijos vuelven a vivir con los padres y la familia, y comienzan a resguardar este territorio y a atender a los turistas. Pero 3 años después, un funcionario municipal llega al lugar y les ofrece a la comunidad, les trae un plano, un dibujo, ¿no es cierto? Y les dice, bueno, les traemos $5000 y un proyecto para que, como está viniendo mucha gente, y ahora entendemos que el camino se mejoró, que el pueblo apareció, el municipio les trae un aporte económico y un diseño de un quincho, que es como una especie de lugar para acoger a los turistas y darle un café o algo para recibirlo. No tenían eso, lo recibían en su casa. Así que lo que pasó es que Pedro, el leñador, nos llama por teléfono 3 años después de haber hecho este proyecto, y nos dice, bueno, Rodrigo y Martín, acaba de venir un funcionario municipal, me trae $5000 y un proyecto para que hagamos el quincho, esta especie de recepción para los turistas. Y dijimos, bueno, muy bien, porque esa era la idea. Después de la postal, comenzábamos a desarrollar el equipamiento para recibir a los turistas. Y le dijimos, bueno, ¿qué le dijo usted, Pedro? Bueno, yo le dije que no. Y nosotros, pero ¿cómo, Pedro? ¿Cómo le dice que no? Le dije que no, porque primero tenía que consultarlo con mis arquitectos. Y eso nos llamó mucho la atención, o sea, nos imaginábamos un leñador en la cordillera de los Andes, le dice a un funcionario municipal que antes de cualquier decisión tiene que consultar con su equipo de arquitectos que lo asesoran. Y ahí dijimos, bueno, parece que estamos llevando arquitectura donde la arquitectura no llegó. Y nos quedábamos nuevamente con esta idea de la arquitectura donde no llegó. Y bueno, y acá desarrollamos el proyecto, finalmente se acepta la ayuda del municipio, pero diseñamos el proyecto nosotros con la sabiduría de los habitantes locales. Estas son 30.000 tejuelas de madera que se hacen en el lugar, y finalmente desarrollamos lo que el municipio había ofrecido aportar. Ahí está, ¿cierto? En el lugar. Siempre escuchando y entendiendo qué es lo que la gente del lugar tiene disponible y qué sabiduría tiene para hacer este tipo de cosas. Y por último, 5 años después, nos llaman, bueno, nos llega un correo invitándonos a presentar, a participar en el proceso de selección de los 88 oficinas o arquitectos que van a estar en la Bienal de Venecia del 2016. Alejandro Aravena nos envía un correo y nos invita, y nosotros decíamos, pero bueno, tenemos una obra muy pequeña que se ha forjado en mucho tiempo, venían justo 10 años de lo que habíamos hecho, y dijimos, bueno, el encargo era muy, muy simple. En una hoja carta, que se ve acá a la izquierda, uno de puño y letra tenía que escribir y contar una batalla ganada. Y la batalla ganada nosotros contábamos que era que vuelven los hijos de la ciudad a vivir al campo. Se había dado vuelta a esto, y se logra conservar este territorio, no se vende a un empresario turístico que no entiende las dimensiones y las capacidades de este territorio, sino que vuelven estos hijos que nacieron ahí a desarrollar, pero con una visión sincrónica, sabiamente, este lugar. Esa era la batalla ganada. Vuelven los hijos de la ciudad, una vez preparados en la ciudad, vuelven al campo, a resguardar este territorio. Ahora, la segunda hoja carta es la de la derecha, y ahí teníamos que contar cómo contamos esta historia al mundo, en la Bienal de Venecia. Bueno, como no teníamos nada, lo único que teníamos era algo que no era nuestro, que era el mirador, ¿cierto? Este volumen de madera que no estaba clavado, que uno le saca 16 tuercas, y esto se desarma, y se puede volver a armar muy fácilmente. Entonces decíamos, bueno, llevémoslo de Chile a Venecia, pero porque claro, Europa lo que quiere ver es el objeto, ¿cierto? Esto que había salido en las revistas, y que lo habían visto en libros, eso es lo que quieren ver. Pero nosotros dijimos, pero lo más importante es que vamos a meter un tipo de persona dentro. O sea, Pedro y la señora Marta van a viajar a Venecia a armar esto, y algo tienen que decirle al mundo. Bueno, para eso grabamos unos videos, y eso se presentaba en la Bienal. Finalmente fuimos seleccionados para estar ahí en la Bienal con este proyecto. Aquí está Pedro Vázquez, el leñador. El día en que estábamos comenzando a desarmar este mirador en Pino Huacho para llevarlo a Venecia. Comenzamos un proceso de clasificación de cada una de las piezas, a marcarla y a subirla a un contenedor, y esto es lo que quedó, ¿cierto? Una especie de trípode acá donde quedan las fundaciones, y el mirador se va a Venecia, y este mirador era lo que había hecho que de alguna manera vuelvan los hijos a vivir al campo. Comienza el viaje, ¿cierto? Lo vemos por una aplicación donde va este barco, y llegamos a Venecia con Pedro. La señora Marta, que es la señora de Pedro, no quiso viajar porque para ella los animales no lo iba a dejar solo. Era muy importante. Y lo que sucede es que llega Pedro y Carlos, su hermano, a Venecia y nos vamos al Arsenal de Venecia a armar esto, la exposición, este volumen que teníamos que armar. Y Pedro se pone a conversar con el guardia de seguridad, Domenico Lanucara. Se hacen muy amigos, hablaba español, y Pedro le dice, Domenico, quiero que me muestre el lugar, vinimos a trabajar, no vinimos a hacer turismo a Venecia, Pedro iba a trabajar. Muéstrame el lugar donde tenemos que montar la obra. Y Domenico nos lleva, vamos caminando, y se para en este lugar, ¿cierto? Donde teníamos que acá montar la exposición. Acá habían los videos y afuera el mirador. Pero acá viene una conversación y finalmente lo que un leñador de la cordillera de los Andes le tenía que decir al mundo. Y no venía dicho en los videos, que era lo que habíamos preparado nosotros, se lo dice acá. Y nosotros estábamos atrás escuchando. Entonces, es muy bonito porque Domenico le dice a Pedro, lo único que necesito que ustedes tengan mucho cuidado con estos pilares, con estos muros y con este suelo. Por favor, no toquen los pilares, no claven un clavo, tienen que montar la obra muy delicadamente, y Pedro se impresiona. El leñador de la cordillera de los Andes se impresiona y le dice, pero Domenico, ¿por qué tengo que tener tanto cuidado con esto? Que era este edificio. Y Domenico, el italiano, le dice, lo que pasa, Pedro, es que usted está parado en un edificio de más de 1000 años, como situándolo, ¿cierto? Y Pedro empieza a recorrer la mirada y mira el edificio y los pilares y todo, y le dice, ah, Domenico, así que ustedes tienen edificios de más de 1000 años, yo tengo un volcán de millones de años, le dice. Y eso para nosotros fue rotundo. La respuesta de un leñador a un italiano que lo sitúa y le dice, cuidado porque usted está en toda la historia del mundo parado, así que tenga mucho cuidado con esto. Y Pedro finalmente le dice esa respuesta que es rotunda. ¿Y qué quiere decir Pedro con esto? Pedro le está diciendo que es un tipo de persona que habita en Latinoamérica y que está en todas partes, ¿no es cierto?, en todas partes de Latinoamérica, y que pone el énfasis en las personas y en esa relación con su medio y no en las cosas. Entonces, ¿qué le decía el italiano? Cuide este edificio tiene más de 1000 años, estamos poniendo como Europa, poniendo el énfasis en lo construido, en las cosas. Y un habitante de la cordillera de los Andes, que lo único que tiene es una pequeña casa, y este territorio y este volcán nevado, que define a una persona frente a él, le dice, para mí es más importante esta relación que tengo con este territorio y este paisaje, ¿no es cierto?, que todo lo construido que tú me puedas mostrar en Europa. Entonces, ahí nos dimos cuenta que lo que estábamos haciendo como Grupo TALCA era poniéndonos a un costado de un tipo de persona especial y escuchar. Y ese tipo de personas son los sabios que habitan todos los lugares rurales, nuestros pueblos originarios y nuestros campesinos, nuestros pescadores, gente que de alguna manera no ha estado en la velocidad de la ciudad, ¿cierto? Y eso lo llevamos nosotros, dijimos, bueno, con esto nosotros hacemos clases hace 10 años en las escuelas de arquitectura, en distintas escuelas, y lo que hacemos es llevar esa idea de escuchar a este habitante, a este tipo de persona sabia que habita el campo, o a nuestros pueblos originarios, a nuestros estudiantes escuchan y con eso hacen. Primero, ser receptivo para luego dar un paso creativo. ¿Ya? Bueno, acá vienen las imágenes cuando se estaba armando esto en Venecia, ¿cierto? Esta es la nueva postal del mismo mirador en Venecia. Y acá están los hijos de Pedro, que hoy en día viven con ellos. Se restaura la familia, ahora viven con su hijo, con los abuelos, el pueblo no desapareció, que es lo que pasa normalmente en el campo. Y ahora podemos entender por qué partimos con esta imagen, ¿cierto? Porque en nuestro trabajo lo hemos desarrollado a un costado de pescadores, leñadores, carboneros, y de pueblos originarios, en donde nuestro primer acto creativo es el acto de escuchar, para luego dar el siguiente paso, primero receptivo, para luego dar este paso hacia lo creativo. Eso. Eso le queríamos contar. Creo que estamos en el tiempo.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think Jasmine is gonna introduce our next speaker.
Thank you, Rodrigo and Martin, for introducing us to Pedro and claiming a geography of encounters from Chile to Venice and from La Ciudad de Regreso al Campo. Now we would like to welcome Mexican architect and educator, Jorge Gracia. Jorge Gracia is the founder of Gracias Studio, an architecture firm established in the city of Tijuana since 2004. He has been awarded multiple merits and distinctions for his practice and educational endeavors. Some of these include the Design Vanguard by Architectural Record, the Emerging Voices Award by the Architectural League of New York, and the Best of the Best by Red Dot Awards in Berlin, among others. Gracias Studio is an architecture and construction firm that develop projects on both sides of the Mexico-US border, in California and Baja California. His practice evolves on both sides, his practice evolves according to the need of the region in which the project is executed. Because of the border condition that generates a bicultural region in constant change, his projects seek to listen before proposing and to think before executing. He founded Escuela Libre de Arquitectura in his hometown of Tijuana in 2014, a school focused on learning the craft of architecture. Jorge Gracia is an architect committed to his community, working with colleagues and students to build a better city for the future generations of his beloved Tijuana. Thank you, Jorge, for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. Thanks. And okay, I'm gonna start while I'm talking. I'm gonna present a short video from a film by Josh Bigley. Let me share my screen while I'm talking. It's not gonna have audio, but hold on. Okay. Are we listening? Are we looking? Are we sharing screen? Yeah. So I'd like to start talking about the territory. I love the story about the leñador, the Pinohuacho, and I think Latin America has that many territories. The video I'm showing here, I don't know if it's showing, I hope it does, but it shows only like 100 meters from the border, all the way from west to east in the Mexican border. So just by looking at this short video, you can see the vast amount of differences between both sides of the border, but in regards to the landscape is the same. So, but you can see the difference of the way you see. Sometimes you'll see residential developments, some commercial, sometimes industrial, sometimes there's nothing, sometimes a wall, sometimes doesn't happen anything. So with this video that it takes a little long, so I'm not gonna put it all, but I'm gonna share another screen for now. So, okay. So here you see, hold on, the border with 1,000 people that cross every day in both directions, 300,000 vehicles and 7,000 semi trucks cross the border every day here. So we have to understand it somehow, but at the same point, understand that this is a bicultural area, and we have to understand some backgrounds before trying to propose a project in this area. We are an architecture studio and a school that is focused on local projects, but thinking out global to act local. So we have 133 years since the foundation of our city, compared to other cities as Ciudad Juárez, New York, Monterrey, or Mexico City, with 500, 425, 397, and 362. So this is Tijuana in the 1920s. It started by the prohibition laws of the alcohol and gambling in 1920, that it was from 1920 to 1933. There was a casino that was founded in 1927, and that's how the international tourism started in the region. So geographically, we have a linear connection between Baja California Norte and Baja California. And we are located through the Pacific Ocean, and just up north, San Diego, California, and all California. So for us, we have a geopolitical intersection about two conditions that emerges and combine the different aspects of political situations. There are 30 states we receive immigrants from 30 states of Mexico and 10 countries: Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Cuba, Haiti, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and the US. And now Ukrainian immigrants are arriving in the last 3 weeks. So one of the interesting things here is that every 3 months, from what I've been living all my life here, there's always a different situation that push us to evolve. So if you can see the region, it's the urban fabric. It goes together. If we delete the yellow line, then you will just think that it's just one area. So that's the way I understand it, and that's the way the conditions has been for myself. It is different conditions, as in all Latin America. Every region of Latin America has different conditions. Here in Tijuana, it depends on the subject, the people that is talking about the city, with the story that is gonna tell you about. Because it's a city that receives people from everywhere, so the perspective about how it is, how it will be always different. And another interesting thing is that when you ask somebody, why do you like living in Tijuana? Nobody's going to be able to answer that question. Hold on one second, let me put this here. So this is the connection between the ocean, and this is the neighborhood where I was born and raised, in Playas de Tijuana. And I'm going to present a small art project that it was developed in this property here. On the north side of the border, there is this park called the Friendship Park, which doesn't seem so so friendly here with the walls. But before, in the 90s or 1985, it was just a chain link fence that we used to play in the north side without even needing a passport or anything. So every year that passes, the situation changes here. So as a city of 133 years old, the timing in the cities with more years, more age, so more rules. So that's why I think here we're in a good time, because sometimes rules they're good for some points, but for other, I don't believe that much. They limit you to think out differently. It is not a typical history of a town from Mexico. And we have all this transculture border situation, and it's a meeting point for immigration. We as Mexicans like to be as close as in the US. The US likes to be as far away from us. It's a situation that it's pretty common, but at the same time, it's a codependence. There are some particular backgrounds in regards to art that have developed in this area. This is an art installation from Richard Liu in 1988. This installation consisted of a freestanding door hinged on a frame heavily placed on the border, just a few miles from the Tijuana International Airport. Aside from providing a symbolic portal into a dignified existence in the United States, the border door also transformed the space of the border itself, to disrupting the desolate and inhospitable environment of the region. Another project is from Marcos Ramirez Serre for the Insight project in 1997. It's a monumental sculpture measuring 10 meters high, and it was commissioned for the project Insight in 97. It's a Trojan horse that has two faces facing both sides of the border. The sculpture recalled the mythological Trojan horse. It possesses two heads, one facing the United States and one facing Mexico. The two-headed horse embodied the indifference of both countries despite their inescapable codependence. Or Javier Tellez, One Flew Over the Void in 2005. This performance ends with a human cannonball being shot over the border into the United States, a defiant act of that transgresses social and political boundaries, literally and figuratively. Underscoring the hardships faced by the millions of Mexicans and Central American workers who cross the border illegally every year in search of a better life. These other projects from Michael Schnorr, if I don't recall. It's also for Insight 1994, and it's a project that it has this sofas over a brick construction with a fire pit. So for immigrants, before they cross the border, they can have a relaxed time before they start walking and crossing illegally to the United States in the night. So at that point, that's what I have lived as a citizen of that region of Playas de Tijuana. And then when I when I finished school and I started my own practice, I worked in the US for a while in San Diego. Actually, I had to cross the border illegally. Well, not illegally, the border, but the work, yes. And when I decided to come back after several years working there, and I did this project that implemented a mix of building systems, not commonly used for residential projects at that point in the area in 2004, 2005. So the building system, it was a steel structure for a residential project, but the floors were made out of wood, the walls were made out of wood also as a structure element. So we combined both building systems, and that's for me, it was an analogy of two countries united by architecture, being the circulation, the core of the connection between the two. So that was our first project as an independent studio. I think every act that we do as a citizen, it impacts the future of a city. So with that in mind, seeing that with that previous project that I just showed, we were hired to do another project, which it was in Valle Guadalupe. And what we did here, we were actually hired to do a development of residential projects to sell. So, but to live on the desert is not very common, or to have a project in the middle of the dry terrain is not very common in Mexico. Normally, all the projects at that point were done in areas where there was a beach or lots of vegetation. So for me, it was clear that we needed to create value of the place where you are. So the only way is to, I camped there, and I knew that the most beautiful thing, it was the night, that there was no noise, that you could see the stars. So that was one of the main things of how to create architecture in a place where you don't interfere anything, where landscape, where architecture defines the landscape. Because at the first, when I visited there, it was a territory. I don't see it as landscape, but when we put architecture on a territory, architecture becomes architecture, and landscape becomes landscape. That's the way I see it. So it totally changes when you start putting a scale volume in a territory. It really changed the place. So we started building these elements. To be able to achieve that construction in that area, we had to do prefabrication. And the main reason was because we knew that by having construction workers in a site so fragile like the desert, so dry, they will destroy it, and to restore that nature, it's gonna take several years. So we started designing elements through the nature of the space, prefabricated modules from 3 hours away that we assemble on site. And these are other projects, learning from that, how a project can impact on the tourism of the area. We were also working on another project called the Culinary Arts School, that we knew that through architecture we could have an impact on the city. I think to be able to educate, it needs to be in a creative environment. I think design helps people be more motivated. The way this configuration of a project, even though it faces this building was designed in a very badly time for the city, where there was lots of kidnapping and all the bad news that you can see about Tijuana. It was at that point. So in general, we wanted to create a more connected to the street project. We couldn't do it completely, but we did it in the opposite direction of the street. We created our own street inside the property. And why is that? Because we wanted the students that are there to interact and to have a way of believe that that's their new way of life, and not being 2 areas, like going to school and then going to interact with your friends. So we wanted all the time to have the same conditions. So this is what we can see, how when you are on a classroom, on a class on the kitchens here, it's all glass. So you're always watching the people that are on break. And so at the end, it's always as if they were on a restaurant. So we implemented some elements, like on this floor, for example, you can see we brought a pebble stone from a river close by, that it's close to Ensenada. And the idea was mainly to have a connection with the elements of nature from the area, even though we're in an urban location. And one of the interesting things that happened is that they do wine tastings here, and they take out their shoes when they do these wine tastings. So it was very interesting that when they do their tastings without their shoes, their points go a little higher than normal. So I think you have to have all the senses to be able to absorb or to be able to express or be more creative. So it's a way of opening all the senses. In this photo, sorry, I'm showing this photo because we also, when we were designing this project, we noticed that we could specify a partition for a bathroom, that it could be stainless steel or whatever brand. But we understand that if every time we specify a material that it comes from abroad, that is not manufactured in the area, or we are taking out a job for a local craftsman, or taking out good amount of money for people. There are people here. So we decided to work first quote how much will it cost to bring something from abroad, and then do our own design and hire our own iron workers and work with the what we have here to be able to create our own designs. At the end, the project is more unique, and the income of that project goes to the community, to the workers, locals, to the local workers. Okay, so this is the plaza, the auditorium at the end, all materials, and then this project, it's called, it's our Escuela Libre de Arquitectura. It's a project that it was founded in 2014. Our studio we founded in 2004. We have a plan of every 10 years doing something that motivated us as a person and as a team. First the studio, then the school, and we're almost ready to start a new project. And so in this project, we wanted to do a regeneration of the social aspects of life in the area where the school is. We are located, it's a school that is located in the red light district of the city. We call it, it's like a urban acupuncture, because it's on the, if you see here on the red area is the red light district, the yellow area, it's all the historic part of Tijuana, and the green line is the border. So it needed to be strategically located in a place where the students need to be embedded on the social and economical, cultural, transport, all the problems. So the approach is to be immersed in the problematics of the city, to be able to understand it first. So the model, it has a software and a hardware. The structure, it means the building itself, which is very small, but at the same point, it doesn't matter because it opens to the city. We can say that the city is the structural, because we take the students to the shops, from the carpenters, for the iron workers, for the every shop, and so every Wednesday we take them to construction sites so they can learn from seeing. So their internships, the 3-year program, they have they have to go to work with an architect or a construction company that like not exactly a construction company, but a design development company, design build company. And then so it's every year 10 weeks. So the interesting part of that is that when they come back every year, when they go 10 weeks, when they come back, that's the interesting thing, is that they share what they learned with others, and they go to different parts of the world. So at the end, it's like they have traveled everywhere. So I think by traveling, you have as an architect, is one of the must things to do, like to understand the way life is. But one of the most important thing is that they have to go see what's going on all over the world, but we encourage them to stay in the city. And I'm gonna show you how we do it. We have the craft recognition for the construction workers, social and historic awareness, and professionals in practice as teachers. So at least one time they need to know how to bend a rebar, or because they go every Wednesday to the construction site. So it's not the same to tell a worker how to do things and then learning how to do it, and then at least understand the hard work that it is to be able to propose designs that are buildable in this environment in particular. Because if we think global, everything is possible, but sometimes when you're working locally, you have to work with what you have, and it's kind of the same thing we were talking about, el leñador de Pino Guacho, no? We take an approach of thinking global, but acting local. So, and this is some of the visits that we have as every Wednesday. So the craft recognition is very important. Architecture is a craft, so the more practice you have, the better. And to be and that craft of architecture is not like as a carpenter, you can do it yourself. So the craft of architecture, it involves lots of people. In this point, we have to let them know that what their work is very important for us. So we promote and we let them know that it's important for us, what they do for us. And at one point I talked to one of them and he started crying, like one of the workers. He said that nobody had told her how important was what he does. He thought he was just a albañil. So for us as architects, I think it's very valuable to know that how important they are, but it's not only for us, I think for them also to be able to. So in this case, this is actually in the same street of where the building is understand the social historic awareness. We are a city with no history in reality. So we are creating our own history. And that's what motivates me in personal a lot, because opposite to other cities from Mexico, there are lots of limitations in regards to historic sites, or they have all this cultural baggage that before started thinking, building or designing, they have to go all the way to that baggage of cultural emotions or history. And in this part of Mexico is very different. We're always thinking forward, and we get lots of influence from the United States, which also in this region, it doesn't have a lot of history. So that I think that pushes to do different things. It's a community that had evolved from little people to right now it's almost 200 people that have been involved with this movement. And I think it's very important to show that in the disciplines we have from artists to producers to planners, directors, sustainable designers to brokers, builders, and even developers. So the jobs that are being awarded here in the area is not particularly for the best architects. So I think we should learn how to get those jobs. But of course, we as a responsibility as a school and as a local architect, we have to propose projects that can do an impact in the future of the community or the city. So we focus part of our academic program into understanding why somebody's getting a job from the government or from particulars, and that's one of the focus that we also approach. So there are some in the building. There are some architecture studios that the students can do practice here also, and there is also some accommodations for teachers that come from abroad, and the workshops are in all the city. They're not only in the building, but they're everywhere. Even in the terrace of our school, we do sometimes shops. And so basically, it's a proactive model that takes our students to propose changes in the city, propose a cultural connection between the neighborhood. This is at the terrace of the school. And this is a project that is 3 blocks away. It's a project from the school. They found this land that it was abandoned, that it has lots of trash. So they selected all the trash without any equipment or electricity. They had to build these structures to create an event for a lecture series for the school. So instead of going and renting the cultural center, they go to an open, to a place that is in the public right of way, that people that are not architects, they can just swing by and to be more involved in the community. This is the site. The site was very interesting because it's a site that has certain history, even though from the photos you can see that it's an abandoned space, but it used to be a bar that burned 3 times. There is even a story, leyenda from that area, that the devil danced with a woman until it burned. So it's those type of history that don't have that much time, that is not a structural history, but it's leyendas from the area that we ask our students to find and to keep that essence alive of what we are, because we don't have that much of history. So they had to build this with lots of trash. And so at the end, they created this interesting event for 2 days, where they brought different architects and urban planners to talk about the city. And this is a story that I'm going to talk about. Sara is one of our first graduates from the school, and it's a project that she was involved after finishing their 3-year program, and she moved to work to this construction site. It took her about 1.5 years to build these 2 projects, 2 houses. Actually, I'm showing only one here, but it's 2 almost the same. So in the site, there was no electricity, there was no water. So the amount of the materials that were utilized here, they were all used in the same project. There were no dumpsters going out of the site after the construction was finished. Only dumpsters were not dumpsters, but trash every day for food that the workers brought every day. So the way it was designed, it's a project that it has to be embedded in the nature of the site and work with the existing conditions, sometimes not even knowing what is going to be downstairs, because when they start digging, they know that there are some rocks. So the design was done on site. Actually, there were drawings, but schematic drawings, but not a fully construction document. So that was kind of the experiment of working on a site with a student alone, with no construction company, just workers directly. And it was a very, very, very interesting experience. So these are some photos of during the construction process. Everything that it was designed needs to be on site, of course, because you see all those rocks that you cannot, even though you have the topo survey with photogrammetry or all the technology that you can have, but at the end you don't know what's below. So one of the ideas here, it was at this same point we were doing another project in Tijuana that it was with building with concrete. I know that concrete is not the most sustainable material, but in some point we wanted to prove that that we could build in a remote environment with a project that you could see it at the end and you feel that technology has taking place there. So we were not concerned about the sustainability about the material, but we're more concerned about how the construction process from somebody that just finished school can go to some site and build it there. So at the same point, we were able to utilize all the stones that were broken, because none of the big stones were broken, but just little ones, and those ones got cut in pieces, and they got into all the concrete mixtures that we did on the site to be able to finish the house. So at the end, you have a texture of the same rocks, the granite from the site, but on the finish of the floors of the house.
Okay, I think we might need to start wrapping up.
Another important thing, how to conserve through through the construction time, and what do you do with the leftover materials that you use during the construction? Because we didn't want to take anything out. We wanted to reuse everything that we use for formworks and take it then to the finished product. So here are some photos, some photos of the finished product. It's still right now, actually, at this point, they're installing the solar panels and solar heating for the pool. But that's, I think it's a big challenge for a student to be able to accomplish. And it feels like a thesis that the practical way of learning architecture, it's one way. I'm not saying that is the way, but I think it's one way. Like it's a craft. You have to wake up early in the morning, be there at the site, be there all the way until the end to be able to achieve a construction. The experience about as an architect, I think, is throughout the years. So the experience you get as an architect, sometimes when we go to school and we think that just by finishing school, you're gonna be a good architect. I think it's a process. It's like a muscle. You have to practice. You have to do one is not going to be good, maybe the second one, or maybe the third, maybe none of them, but you have to practice a lot to be able to achieve the goals that you want. And that, I think, in the education is one way. That's one way of doing things. The way I see it is that take it to the practical level and practice a lot.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Jorge, for sharing with us Una Arquitectura Sin Fronteras y la Escuela Libre. As we know, in 1843, Uruguayan painter Joaquín Torres García visually overturned the South American continent to acclaim art rooted in local South American traditions. He described it as such: he dicho Escuela del Sur porque en realidad nuestro norte es el sur. In these words, Torres Garcia declares a new geographical imagination by reframing the continent's experience. Analogous pedagogical experiments play a crucial role in shaping architectural discourse and practice in the second half of the 20th century. Today, the work of DISLOCAL, Grupo TALCA, and Escuela Libre de Arquitectura can be envisioned through a travelogue. In this critical voyage, a landscape is, in many ways, a survey of radical strategies of architectural pedagogy, claiming that the best way to change the discipline is by transforming the way that it is taught. Their work attends significant questions like how do the experiments in architecture education reflect broader social technological shifts, and how did these methodologies challenge conventional teaching and learning? Let's aim to practice architecture as an honest act that encourages observation, solidarity, and action. Architecture without borders, as mentioned by Jorge Gracia. Hopefully, some of these inspire students to look at how design and architecture can have agency in the ideation and construction of spaces, how architecture frames human encounters and provides sites for empathy and understanding. Participate, work on your community, cultivate situated knowledges, think differently, and seek colleagues with varying perspectives. Observe, write, draw, question, and remember there are all kinds of ways of teaching, making, and unmaking architecture. Thank you.
We would like to take a chance to remind the audience that the Q&A feature is enabled, and we'll be taking questions from both the live audience in the war room and the online audience. In the meantime, in order to start the conversation, I would like to start by asking our panelists their take on the issue of locality as it relates to education, especially coming from an international school such as the GSD, and seeing the examples you presented. We see, I mean, the example of the viewpoint that Pedro's viewpoint that was then traveling to Venice. It seems like only after understanding local practice and locality through an extensive research and practice, then you can start to disseminate then that knowledge around the world. And I think for that reason, the example of Venice Biennale is actually pretty good. So I would like to ask you guys, how do you view locality as part of both the education and practice? And in that sense, is it possible to then grow those practices and education pedagogies to a greater extent, or is it not possible if you want to take the local approach? I don't know who would like to start. If Rodrigo, you would like to start this idea?
Sí, un poco lo que tocaba Jorge, ¿cierto? En su exposición de aprender en el sitio, ¿no es cierto? Finalmente, las escuelas y el aula no está en el sitio, está dentro de una universidad, que está bien que se crucen distintas disciplinas que van a estar en juego luego en la resolución de problemas en el mundo, pero lo que hablaba Jorge, eso de esta estudiante que estuvo de principio a fin en una obra y entendió al permanecer en el lugar todo lo que esa complejidad que toma tiempo, hizo que su aprendizaje de alguna manera fuera importante. Y cómo la arquitectura de alguna manera, tenemos unos amigos carpinteros que dicen que antes el maestro carpintero era el que estaba y dibujaba sobre la madera del 1400 hacia 1500, hasta ahí llegó como el arquitecto en la obra, y luego con los medios de representación la arquitectura empieza a abandonar la obra y se va alejando cada vez más. Entonces creo que esta idea de lo local, del aprender en el sitio, requiere tiempo, requiere paciencia, requiere una relación con el lugar, y requiere, como decíamos también antes, requiere una predisposición a entrar receptivamente al lugar, que es algo que también pasa, que creemos que nosotros somos la respuesta para el problema de un lugar, y primero tenemos que entrar escuchando, aprender de ese lugar, aprender de los carpinteros, de los albañiles, cómo se trabaja esa materia en ese lugar, entrar receptivamente para luego dar un paso hacia lo creativo. Entonces, nos han enseñado, por lo menos cuando nosotros estudiamos en esta escuela del año 90, el año 2000, de que creo que no nos enseñaron mucho ese paso receptivo, sino que parece que nos dijeron que nosotros éramos la respuesta y llegábamos casi a un lugar a venir a decir qué hacer. Entonces, creo que por ahí podría haber una relación con lo local. O sea, salgamos del aula y vamos a los lugares a aprender y a escuchar, entrar, partir escuchando.
Hola, bueno, en respuesta a lo que estaban diciendo, DISLOCAL tiene una postura, somos bastante integrantes y por ende tenemos diferentes posturas. Y algunos miembros piensan igualito lo que acaban de decir, que hay que entrar al lugar y hacer como conversaciones directas para hacer como el actor pasivo. Desde mi punto de vista, que soy socióloga urbana, entrando a esto desde el desarrollo internacional, creo que es importante que el experto siga siendo un experto, esa es mi opinión, y que dialogue, que entienda cuáles son los recursos necesarios en el lugar, cuál es la situación política económica, especialmente económica, y política cultural de tiempo histórico, para poder crear un producto que sea significativo, importante para esa comunidad. Pero no creo que tuvimos ese problema cuando en DISLOCAL habían muchos estudiantes que estaban tratando de dar como opciones que parecían opciones que lo podría crear cualquier persona de la comunidad. Entonces, ¿para qué estamos nosotros? O sea, entonces, ¿para qué crear una plataforma e integrar al estudiante en ese sitio si esa persona no necesita la profesión, no tiene que estudiar y no tiene que... O sea, yo sí creo que hay que tener ese debate, como que utilizar ese intercambio bastante delicado entre el conocimiento del lugar y de las personas que pertenecen en ella, con esos conocimientos del externo, que podría ser el estudiante, que es nacional, o podría ser una organización internacional, o podría ser supranacional. Pero en ese diálogo también es importante luego devolvernos en nuestros roles iniciales, y que el que sabe definir la forma de manera estética más avanzada pueda también definirla, siempre escuchando lo que el otro quiere o sea, necesita divulgar y procesar, ¿no? Entonces, claro, es un proceso iterativo, iterative en inglés, iterativo, como muy importante. Y como sociólogo urbano, yo pienso que deberían como que siempre tratar de incluir el otro, que es que siempre va a ser un nuevo otro. Si ahorita el que no tiene la voz es la mujer, o es la persona que está en silla de rueda, o es el señor que vive en la calle, mira, o sea, dependiendo de quién es ese otro en el entorno socioeconómico del país y del sitio donde se está construyendo, se tiene que llegar más allá, y siempre se va a estar transformándose. Entonces yo pienso que el rol del experto debería seguir siendo, si no es experto, utilizando la metodología participativa bastante bien, pero enraizada en las ciencias sociales, que tienen metodologías bien establecidas y que también va desde una discursiva, o sea, desde un discurso y un desarrollo empírico y empírico.
¿Puedo hacer un hijack? ¿Es español o inglés? Jorge, Rodrigo, Martín, que está un poco en silencio, una obra muy linda. No tanto por el tema estético, al que no quisiera ahondar, porque se comunica por sí sola, tectónico, un proceso narrativo y de observación muy pausado. Hay tres aspectos que me gustaría comentar, no de la obra, sino las metodologías de aprendizaje, ¿no? Hoy he aprendido viendo, no sé cómo están construidas las casas, pero por lo menos sé que están enraizadas en un paisaje, que se apoderan de un paisaje o generan una narrativa constructiva. Hay una pregunta que parte siendo muy de DISLOCAL, pero va a ser una narrativa muy personal. En 25 años de trabajo académico y profesional, yo solo he vivido en Latinoamérica, de esos 25, 8. Y no deja de ser latinoamericana la arquitectura la que me ha formado. He tenido que trabajar en 47 países. Entonces, ahí me entra una pregunta que sé que parte de Latinoamérica y crece en Latinoamérica y construye Latinoamérica. Me recuerda un poco a Serrat, que hablándole, cantautor español, que hablándole a otro cantautor venezolano, Simón Díaz, de folclore local, hablaba que el hombre universal es el hombre más local posible. Es el hombre que encuentra las necesidades con la naturaleza desde el punto de partida, un poco lo que decía Rodrigo, en un diálogo de necesidades y de equivalencias, que no se restan, no se suman, se balancean. Esa relación la he encontrado en China. Me tocó particularmente trabajar en pueblos en China o en Arabia Saudita o en los pueblos del norte de nórdicos. Hay una relación con la naturaleza mayúscula, hay una relación con la comunidad mayúscula. En nuestra latitud cósmica, un poco como Torres García, ¿no? Del norte-sur, esa relación de Uruguay a la confrontación del epicentro, DISLOCAL plantea una universalización de lo local, ¿no? Yo creo que nuestras prácticas, independientemente de cuáles sean, y me pongo al pie del cañón, redibujan un poco la relación del especialista y el generalista, o la relación del paisaje y quien lo construye, un poco esas narrativas de Jorge o de Rodrigo. Martín, también te meto en el paquete, del especialista de la carpintería, del especialista de la observación del paisaje, del especialista en la construcción de la familia. No, hay una data importante. Ahora, mi gran pregunta, haciendo esto y con esto cierro, en la radicalización pedagógica o lo que estamos dejando, cómo ustedes que han mostrado un trabajo tan bonito, ¿qué lo hace radical, aunque no sea un oficio local? ¿No? Una pregunta abierta.
Tengo que decir algo. ¿Ah? Yo hablando de... en lo personal, yo siento que no somos radicales. Como que siento que somos un reflejo de nuestra situación geográfica. Yo siento que el aprendizaje, como lo estamos abordando en este proyecto que presenté, es algo muy único, muy de sitio. O sea, no creo que puede ser aplicado a todo. Definitivamente, estoy totalmente de acuerdo. Estoy totalmente de acuerdo que el mejor habitante, como dices, el global es el mejor habitante local, como más o menos así lo explicaste, totalmente de acuerdo. Entonces creo que al final de cuentas Latinoamérica es un reflejo de eso, ¿no? De que cada zona, simplemente en el video, no sé si salió al principio un pedacito del video, pero geográficamente, si solamente ese video muestra 100 metros de la puerta a Latinoamérica por una extensión de 2000 millas, que es desde un lado desde el Pacífico. Entonces, ¿cómo es todo? O sea, estamos hablando de una escala inmensamente grande, de unas características sumamente distintas. Entonces, la forma de enseñar no puede llamarse que es radical, pues. O sea, se tiene que llamar, no sé, de otra forma. O sea, y no se puede llamar una pedagogía porque tampoco lo es. Es un instrumento que se aplica aquí. Yo siento que yo estoy haciendo un manual para aquí. Entonces yo creo que con eso yo podría cerrar, o sea, porque, no sé, esa es mi visión sobre lo radical y lo pedagógico.
Sí, concuerdo con Jorge en eso, con lo que habla Luciano, concuerdo con Jorge en eso de que, por ejemplo, con Martín, tampoco estamos en una búsqueda de ponernos una etiqueta de ser radicales o como también de repente dicen, bueno, estamos en una búsqueda de innovar. ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué vamos a innovar? ¿O por qué es necesario? La innovación viene como una respuesta a un problema, pero no la buscamos, sino que aparece y damos ese paso. En esta idea de lo radical, y lo hablábamos con Jorge también el otro día, esto también de la pedagogía o las metodologías, también concuerdo en eso con Martín, en lo que desarrollamos como grupo TALCA, estamos en la búsqueda de una manera, y cada manera es distinta en cada localidad, y para entenderla hablábamos de esto de escuchar, de entender esa manera, y con lo que hablaba María Beatriz, es que nosotros al escuchar no es que vamos a repetir lo que estamos viendo, sino que vamos a tomar esa información, primero, para poder dar ese paso en las decisiones, para que sean las que creemos puedan ser decisiones lo más correctas posible. No nos vamos a quedar con que el campo, por ejemplo, está desapareciendo este mundo rural porque el campo no fue sustentable. Y finalmente los hijos ya no se presenta un futuro en ese territorio y en esa manera de habitar. Entonces, de ninguna manera podríamos volver a repetir lo mismo. Entonces, creemos en esto que no estamos tampoco en una búsqueda de una pedagogía o de una manera radical, sino que de entender de que finalmente hay que hacer lo correcto de alguna manera que haga que las cosas sean posibles. Y ahí aparecen las posibilidades, ¿no es cierto? Con lo disponible, con la sabiduría local. Finalmente no puedo traer a una comunidad que no puede pagar cierto tipo de material o no sabe resolverlo, una manera que la aprendí en otro lado y que no puede llegar ese material y necesito especialistas. Entonces, estoy de acuerdo con Jorge, o sea, creo que cada caso tiene una manera de responder en cada lugar.
Well, thank you for that. We have a question from the audience.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the presentation. So for the final question, I want to touch on the idea of radicality in relation to periphery. Whereas it's within the conflict urban areas or secluded communities in Chile or between the borders in Mexico, choosing the margin as a space of radical pedagogy is to understand it as a place of resistance and not to romanticize it as a place of precarity, oppression, informality, or shortage. Thus, to be radical means to push the boundaries, not necessarily to innovate, to be progressive. So my question is, how can architectural education in Latin America can resist within the current conditions while still promote a cutting-edge pedagogy? And to you, what does this notion of progress means?
That's a beautiful question. Do you guys mind if I just jump into it? I don't think the aiming is to be as like Jorge Rodrigo was saying, like aiming for the radical or the sharpest answer possible. But you mentioned something about quality, which is probably the starting point. I mean, quality might actually be in harvest. In precarity, it's when the quality probably emerge. And all our countries, we rated ourselves in education, but it's probably one of the lowest GDP in the world, with education like the lowest investment ever. And even though we're quite proud of this, not too many, but production of architecture that has some certain kind of meaning and somehow articulate solution for. And I think historically in the last 15, 20 years, for answer for many more. So one of the major concerns, and I'm going to be very specific in Latin America, has been how structurally, but exponentially, we're going to give an answer for many more. Right? It's not a social housing. It's a better living. It's a public realm. It's that make us create the new commons, which is totally different than the specifically Anglo commons, because it's a different convention. It's based on needs rather than a planning. Very specifically, and I'm gonna look into our context in DISLOCAL, which is basically Venezuela at the moment. The precarity doesn't get from the lack of infrastructure. I mean, we have beautiful buildings. On architecture was probably 24 years ago, running and quite a state-of-the-art buildings. But we don't have the system that supports such a thing. So we lost the human capital. We're trying to stitch with the human capital and possibilities in every single millimeter of our reach to recreate the discussion and to bring back the quality in terms of the content. I love what Jorge and Rodrigo, you guys were saying. Martín, I'm going to put you here. Is we're not creating new content. The House at the Beach or one of these programs, the content is actually right in front of us, right? So, how do we stitch? For example, I'm going to use this word again. Mobility. For some of, I don't know how much of you know Caracas, for example, which is quite like very topographical city. The public mobility is one of the major challenges, and that creates barriers between across all different social stratas. Not having a car is basically suffering the urban environment. So how do we do? I mean, in even circumstances like we don't even have gas to put in the car. So we have once again all the infrastructure. We don't have the core. And it has been through the mobility or accessibility that we encounter back again programs on quite minimal. It's not about buildings anymore. And this is specific cases, it's about the aggregation of solutions that bring people together rather than to the system. Popular environment, taking care of the kids, for example, kindergarten and senior housing. And that's actually possible because you have the surveillance. So, and once again, it's quite micrometric and nanocosmos of solutions that create a system for the long run. That is when we noiter program, and probably we can learn from that. And so we basically getting a certain kind of impact. I don't know how visible, but these discussions that has been probably methodologically speaking, how do we arrive with the expertise integrates and adds? That's, I mean, sounds intangible. I mean, this is not normal to my own personal practice, but in this ability to discuss where can we just list the things and actions that we can take over is probably one of the plus that we have in our platform. I say ours, you guys are invited, and we love to extend this to all of you in this audience. This is very horizontal and very open. When we say ours, is the ones that we have put it in practice, right? So decoding the ability to solve, methodologic speaking, revisiting what we have in front of us and resources, and you will say it, and then creating systems of solutions. It's one building will not make that. It's a lot of people probably will solve. I don't know if I answered, but somehow I think it is.
I also wanted to just jump in really quickly and just say another thing that's radical is about finding financial models that offer the peripheries, the access to, for example, net zero technology. You know, already architecture has advanced a lot in sustainability and green buildings and whatnot, but that they're very expensive, and so it's about trying to transform or integrate our platform by plugging in to the financial models that exist in the world with the Inter-American Development Bank, World Bank, multilateral development banks across all 6 regions, and developing the right partnerships and business models so that the architect can access the financing that they need from a bottom-up perspective, integrate their architectural know-how into a local environment across the world, but integrating these very costly technologies into these more periphery environments across the world. So informal settlements, or like my colleagues like to call it, emergent self-made home centers around the world.
Thank you everyone for joining us here today, as well as those who are joining us from different parts of the world through the online webinar, especially our panelists. Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias. We thank you for sharing your work and ideas, and we're sure that the conversation we had today will help us rethink approaches to pedagogies across the world.
Well, having said that, we would like to remind everyone of the symposium's final session, which will take place tomorrow at 6:30 Eastern Time. The session will be both in person in the war room and virtually through Zoom. We will be joined by Alejandro Echeverri and Loretta Castro to talk about the right to the city. We hope to see you here tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What an honor. Thank you very much, Jorge.
Gracias.
Rodrigo, Mabe,
Everybody, right?
Rolando, Jasmine, and
you.
everyone.
Have a good day.
Cristina. Have a beautiful evening. Bye-bye.